Are you taking your medication exactly as prescribed? Eating diabetic friendly, and your blood sugar is still climbing? If that's you, I want you to hear this clearly. It's not a willpower problem, and it's very likely not even a food problem. In most cases, it's a mineral problem, and almost nobody is talking about it. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Insulin isn't a lone hormone doing its job in isolation. Insulin is more like a key, and that key only works if the lock it's trying to open is properly built. The lock, your insulin receptors, your pancreatic beta cells, the enzymes that shuttle glucose out of your blood and into your muscles. All of that machinery is built from minerals, not carbs, not protein, minerals. So when your body is deficient in the right minerals, you can have plenty of insulin circulating and it still won't work properly. The key exists, the lock is broken, and that, physiologically, is the root of insulin resistance for a huge number of people, not just too much sugar. This matters far beyond your glucose number. Chronically elevated blood sugar accelerates aging at the cellular level. It stiffens your blood vessels. It fogs your brain. It drains your energy by lunchtime. And over years, it's directly tied to nerve damage, vision loss, and heart disease. This isn't just about managing a number on a meter. This is about whether you age quickly or age well. Today I'm going to walk you through the top 3 minerals that the research consistently shows are deficient in people with type 2 diabetes and prediabetes. And I mean consistently, across multiple studies, in multiple countries, in thousands of patients. I'll explain exactly why each one matters using real physiology, what's happening inside your liver, your pancreas, and your muscle cells. Not just take this supplement advice with no explanation. And then I'll give you the specific practical protocol. How much, what form, what time of day, and what foods deliver these minerals naturally, so you're not guessing. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why your body may be resisting insulin, no matter how clean you eat. And the 3 targeted natural interventions the research shows can start shifting that picture. Let's get into it. Before we get into the 3 minerals themselves, I want to explain something most doctors don't have time to cover in a 15-minute appointment. Why people with diabetes and prediabetes are, physiologically, in a completely different category when it comes to mineral status than the general population. Here's what's really going on inside your body. High blood sugar doesn't just sit quietly in your bloodstream. It actively changes how your kidneys behave. When glucose rises, your kidneys filter more fluid to try to clear that excess sugar out through urine. But minerals like magnesium, zinc, and even chromium are water-soluble, and they get swept out along with that extra fluid. So the same elevated blood sugar you're trying to manage is, at the same time, actively flushing out the very minerals your body needs to manage it. Let me explain this with an analogy. Imagine trying to bail water out of a boat, but every bucket you use has a hole in the bottom. That's what's happening physiologically. You might be eating reasonably well, but if your blood sugar is elevated, you're losing minerals faster than a person with normal glucose ever would. This is why standard nutrition advice, just eat a balanced diet, often isn't enough for someone who already has insulin resistance. You're not working from a neutral starting point. You're working from a deficit. This is also why lab work matters here. Standard blood panels almost never test magnesium, zinc, or chromium status unless you specifically ask. Your doctor can run a perfectly normal metabolic panel while you're significantly depleted in the exact minerals driving your glucose problem, simply because nobody looked. And this is the core distinction I want you to hold on to for the rest of this video. Medication for diabetes, in most cases, is designed to manage the downstream symptom, high blood sugar. It doesn't rebuild the receptor, restore the signaling amplifier, or repair the insulin manufacturing machinery in your pancreas. That's not a criticism of medication. For many people, it's necessary, and it's saving lives. But addressing mineral status is how you address the actual mechanical problem underneath it, alongside your treatment plan, not instead of it. So as we go through magnesium, chromium, and zinc, I want you thinking about each one not as a supplement to add, but as a specific piece of broken machinery you're repairing, a receptor that needs to hear the signal, an amplifier that needs to carry it, and a factory that needs to build the product correctly in the first place. Let's start with the first one, and the one with the strongest research behind it, magnesium. Let's start with a mineral that has by far the strongest research backing for blood sugar control, magnesium. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Magnesium is a required cofactor for over 300 enzymatic reactions, and a huge number of those reactions are directly involved in how your cells respond to insulin. Specifically, magnesium is needed for the insulin receptor on the surface of your cells to properly activate. Without enough magnesium, that receptor becomes sluggish. It doesn't fire correctly, even when insulin is knocking on the door. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Picture the insulin receptor as a security guard, standing at the door of your muscle cell, and insulin is the person showing up with the ID badge. Magnesium is the flashlight the guard needs to actually read that badge. Take away the flashlight, and it doesn't matter how many times insulin shows up with the badge, the guard can't verify it, so the door stays shut, and glucose stays stuck in your bloodstream instead of going into the muscle, where it's supposed to be burned for fuel. And here's the frustrating part. This becomes a vicious cycle. What the research shows is that insulin resistance itself causes your kidneys to excrete more magnesium in your urine. So low magnesium drives insulin resistance, and insulin resistance drives magnesium even lower. One clinical study of type 2 diabetics found that patients with confirmed magnesium deficiency had significantly higher fasting glucose and HbA1c than those with normal magnesium levels. And their insulin resistance score, called HOMA-IR, was markedly elevated as well. Multiple research reviews now describe this specifically as a vicious circle between magnesium status and diabetes. Why does this happen in the first place? Two reasons mainly. One, modern soil is depleted, so vegetables simply contain less magnesium than they did 50 years ago. Two, chronic high blood sugar itself flushes magnesium out through the kidneys. So if you have prediabetes or diabetes, you are, physiologically, in a higher risk category for magnesium depletion, whether or not you feel it. So what do you actually do? For food sources, prioritize pumpkin seeds, spinach, Swiss chard, almonds, and avocado. These are the highest natural food sources of magnesium, and getting them in daily gives your enzymes a steady supply to work with. For supplementation, the form matters enormously. Magnesium oxide, the cheap form found in most drugstore bottles, is poorly absorbed and mostly just pulls water into your gut. Instead, look for magnesium glycinate or magnesium citrate. These are far better absorbed and gentler on digestion. A common, well-studied range is 200 to 400 milligrams per day, ideally taken in the evening, since magnesium also supports the calming, parasympathetic side of your nervous system and can improve sleep quality. And poor sleep, on its own, worsens insulin resistance the very next day. One practical note, if you're on certain diuretics or have kidney disease, magnesium dosing needs to be personalized with your doctor, since your kidneys control how it's cleared. This isn't a reason to avoid it. It's a reason to do it with proper guidance rather than guessing. If this is helpful so far, consider subscribing. I post content like this every day, breaking down the science your doctor often doesn't have time to explain. Now let's move to the second mineral, one you've probably heard of, but almost certainly misunderstand. The second mineral is chromium, and I want to be very precise here, because chromium is one of the most misrepresented supplements on the market. Some companies market it like it's a miracle cure. It isn't. But the actual research, when you read it carefully, does show something real and specific, and I want you to understand exactly what that is and isn't. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Chromium's job is to help form a compound called chromodulin, sometimes called the glucose tolerance factor. Think of chromodulin as an amplifier switch sitting just behind the insulin receptor. Insulin shows up, binds to its receptor, and that's step one. But chromodulin is what amplifies the signal after that. It turns a quiet, weak, open the door message into a loud, clear one that actually gets the glucose transporter moving to pull sugar out of your blood. Let me explain this with an analogy. If magnesium is the flashlight that lets the guard read insulin's ID badge, chromium is the radio the guard uses to call the rest of the building and say, "Let it through." Without it, the message gets received but never relayed. The door stays half open at best. What the research shows is genuinely encouraging, but it comes with an important nuance. The benefit of chromium depends heavily on your baseline glucose control. In a well-known placebo-controlled trial, diabetic patients on higher dose chromium picolinate saw a statistically significant drop in HbA1c over 6 months, along with improved insulin sensitivity, while the placebo group's insulin sensitivity actually got worse. Other trials measuring fasting glucose have found reductions in the range of 5 to 10%, with HbA1c improvements of roughly 0.2 to 0.5%. That's modest. This is not a replacement for medication, but it's a real, measurable physiological effect. And the people who benefit most are those with poorer baseline blood sugar control, or a confirmed chromium deficiency to begin with. Why are so many people deficient? Chromium is almost entirely stripped out of food during modern processing and refining. Refined sugar and white flour, the very foods driving blood sugar problems in the first place, are also nearly zero in chromium. So the same diet that spikes your glucose is often the diet starving you of the mineral your body needs to manage that glucose. That's not a coincidence. It's the same root cause playing out twice. For food sources, broccoli, egg yolks, whole grains, and brewer's yeast are among the richest natural sources. For supplementation, chromium picolinate is the most studied and best absorbed form. Effective doses in research have generally ranged from 200 to 1,000 micrograms per day. I'd encourage starting at the lower end and working with your doctor to reassess after 8 to 12 weeks using an HbA1c test, since that's the time frame most trials use to detect a real change. Going meaningfully above 1,000 micrograms daily hasn't shown additional benefit in the research and may increase strain on the kidneys, so more is not better here. If this video is giving you tools you can actually use, hit subscribe. This channel is built for people who want the real mechanism, not just a headline. Now, the third mineral is the most overlooked of all three, and it plays a completely different role. It's not about the door, it's about the factory that makes the key in the first place. The first two minerals we covered, magnesium and chromium, are about how well insulin works once it's released. Zinc is different. Zinc is about whether your pancreas can make and store good quality insulin in the first place. This is a root cause layer most people never even hear about. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Deep inside your pancreas, in structures called beta cells, insulin isn't just floating around loosely. It's packaged into tiny storage granules, almost like bullets loaded into a chamber, ready to be released the instant your blood sugar rises. Zinc is the mineral that allows insulin to crystallize and pack tightly into those granules. Without adequate zinc, insulin can't be stored properly or released efficiently when you need it. And there's actual imaging research showing that in diabetic conditions, the dense, well-formed core of these insulin storage granules becomes structurally abnormal. Let me explain this with an analogy. If magnesium is the flashlight and chromium is the radio, zinc is back at the factory making sure the badges, the insulin molecules themselves, are actually manufactured correctly and stored properly before they're ever sent out. If the factory is short on raw material, it doesn't matter how good your radios and flashlights are downstream. You're working with a defective product from the start. What the research shows is that this isn't just a theory. Studies mapping zinc concentration in pancreatic tissue have found that beta cells contain some of the highest natural zinc concentrations in the entire human body. That's how central zinc is to this specific job. There's also a well-documented genetic variant in a zinc transporter called ZNT8. People carrying this variant have measurably impaired insulin secretion after a glucose load, and this variant is more common in people who develop type 2 diabetes. In animal models of diabetes, restoring zinc has been shown to improve glucose-stimulated insulin secretion and improve overall beta cell function, separate from any change in insulin sensitivity elsewhere in the body. And in humans, cross-sectional research comparing normal, pre-diabetic, and diabetic groups has found meaningful differences in beta cell function tied to serum zinc status. So while magnesium and chromium are about improving the response to insulin, Zinc is about protecting your capacity to produce quality insulin in the first place, which is exactly why this one matters most for long-term pancreatic health, not just this week's glucose reading. For food sources, oysters are by far the richest source of zinc on the planet, followed by grass-fed beef, pumpkin seeds, and lentils. For supplementation, zinc picolinate or zinc citrate are well-absorbed forms. A common therapeutic range is 15 to 30 milligrams per day. One critical detail: zinc competes with copper for absorption, so if you're supplementing long-term, look for a product that includes a small amount of copper, typically around 1 to 2 milligrams, to keep that ratio balanced. Take zinc away from high-fiber meals or calcium supplements, since both can blunt its absorption, ideally on a lighter stomach, away from your biggest fiber-heavy meal of the day. Now that you understand all three, magnesium unlocking the receptor, chromium amplifying the signal, and zinc protecting the insulin factory itself, let's bring this together into one clear, practical takeaway. Before we wrap up, there's one more piece of physiology I need you to understand, because it's the difference between people who try these minerals and see nothing, and people who see real, measurable change. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Magnesium, chromium, and zinc don't operate as three separate, independent fixes. They operate as a dependent chain, and two major lifestyle factors determine whether your body can actually use them once you take them: cortisol and sleep. Let me explain this with an analogy. Think of these three minerals as workers on an assembly line inside a factory. It doesn't matter how skilled your workers are if the factory manager, cortisol, your primary stress hormone, is constantly sounding false alarms and pulling everyone off the line. Chronically elevated cortisol does exactly that to your glucose system. Cortisol's job, in a genuine emergency, is to raise blood sugar quickly so you have fuel to fight or flee. But in modern life, with chronic stress, poor sleep, or late-night screen exposure, cortisol stays elevated constantly, which means your liver is continuously being told to release stored glucose into the bloodstream, working directly against everything magnesium, chromium, and zinc are trying to do at the receptor and pancreas level. What the research shows is that sleep deprivation alone, even just a few nights of short, poor quality sleep, measurably reduces insulin sensitivity in otherwise healthy people, independent of diet. This matters directly here because magnesium, one of the three minerals we covered, is also one of the primary nutrients your nervous system needs to shift out of that stressed, cortisol-dominant state at night. This is why I specifically recommended taking magnesium in the evening. It's not just about glucose. It's about lowering the cortisol signal that's been counteracting your glucose efforts all day. So here is the practical layer that ties this whole video together. If you're taking these minerals but you're still going to bed at 1 a.m., skipping meals, then binging at night, and living in a constant state of low-grade stress, you are asking three hardworking assembly line workers to overcome a manager who won't stop pulling the fire alarm. The minerals will help, but they'll help far less than they could. The protocol practically looks like this. Prioritize 7 to 8 hours of sleep as non-negotiable, not optional. Get natural sunlight within the first hour of waking, which helps regulate your cortisol rhythm for the entire day. And where possible, build in a short walk after meals, even 10 minutes, since muscle contraction pulls glucose out of your bloodstream through a pathway that doesn't require insulin at all, taking pressure off this entire system while your mineral status rebuilds in the background. Minerals rebuild the machinery. Sleep and stress management determine whether that machinery is even allowed to run. You need both working together for this to actually move your numbers. Now, let's bring everything together. Let's bring this all together because I don't want you to walk away with 3 random supplement names. I want you to walk away understanding the actual chain of events happening inside your body. Magnesium is the flashlight. It allows your insulin receptor to actually recognize insulin when it arrives. Chromium is the radio. It amplifies that signal so the message to absorb glucose actually gets carried out. And zinc is the factory. It ensures your pancreas is manufacturing and storing high-quality insulin to begin with. 3 different points in the same system. Miss any one of them and the whole chain weakens, no matter how disciplined you are with your diet. This is why root cause thinking matters so much more than symptom chasing. Blood sugar isn't just a food math problem. Calories in, calories out, carbs in, glucose up. It's a physiology problem, built on the actual enzymes, receptors, and cellular machinery your body needs raw materials to construct. In modern soil depletion, processed food, and the metabolic stress of high blood sugar itself, all conspire to drain exactly these three minerals, which means the deficiency and the disease often feed each other in a loop. This matters for far more than a number on a glucose meter. It matters for your energy across the day, for how clearly you think, for how well you age, and for protecting your nerves, your eyes, and your heart over the coming decades. Getting this right isn't about chasing a diagnosis. It's about giving your body back the tools it needs to regulate itself the way it was designed to. So here's your direct next step. Don't try to overhaul everything at once. Pick one of these three today. If you know your diet is heavy in processed carbs, start with chromium-rich foods and consider testing your levels. If you're not sleeping well or you feel tension and fatigued by evening, start with magnesium glycinate tonight. And if you want to support your pancreas at the deepest level, start adding zinc-rich foods like pumpkin seeds and grass-fed beef this week. Try just one of these changes today and track how your body responds over the next 2 to 4 weeks. Your energy, your fasting glucose if you monitor it, even your sleep. And if you're currently on any diabetes medication, please talk to your doctor before adding supplements, especially chromium and magnesium, since as your insulin sensitivity improves, your medication needs may change too. This is about working with your body's chemistry, not around your doctor. You weren't handed a broken system. In most cases, your system is simply missing raw materials it needs to run correctly. And that's something you have real power to change, starting today. If this added value, like the video and subscribe to join others who are learning to optimize their health naturally, one root cause at a time. I'll see you in the next one.